Allen Lund Company has new offices in Ogden, Utah and Indianapolis, Indiana. Check allenlund.com to reach them.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Reddick.
The Advisory Committee on Underride Protection finished up its work with 2 reports to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. There were 2 reports because mandate supporters and opponents failed to find common ground. Today, we catch up with 2 members of the committee who were among those expressing concerns, OOIDA board member Doug Smith and Jeff Bennett of Utility Trailer. Also on today's program, as a Greek philosopher once reportedly said, the only constant in life is change, and change is coming to the freight market, but it's coming slowly. Brent Hutto of Truckstop shares the latest data. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. We begin in New Mexico, one of the first states to begin following new drug and alcohol clearinghouse rules that are set to take effect in November. The New Mexico Motor Vehicle Division says they are now checking the FMCSA clearinghouse for potential drug and alcohol violations before taking action on commercial driver's licenses. That includes renewals, transfers, and upgrades. That's a change because as of right now, only employers are required to query the clearinghouse before hiring a driver. But FMCSA rules going into effect on November 18th put more of the onus on state driver's licensing agencies. When a violation is reported to the clearinghouse, an automatic notice goes out, notifying agencies that a driver has a prohibited status. That license is then automatically downgraded to a Class D non-commercial license. New Mexico has made the change ahead of the November deadline, so have Texas and Utah. Other states will follow in the coming months. More positive indicators on the spot market. The Bloomberg Truckstop semi-annual freight broker survey shows that brokers are cautiously optimistic that demand could pick up later this year. Lee Klaskow, senior freight transportation and logistics analyst at Bloomberg Intelligence, said that freight brokers continue to face challenging demand and rates, but that there are signs the worst may be over. Bloomberg and Truckstop believe a return to seasonal demand, higher import levels, and inventory restocking will help drive a recovery later this year. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration held a news conference on Tuesday morning in commemoration of World Day Against Trafficking in Persons. The focus was ongoing efforts to combat human trafficking along the Interstate 81 corridor. Several stakeholders spoke about what's being done along the corridor that runs from Tennessee to New York, including Gerald Lackey, Commissioner for the Virginia Department of Motor Vehicles.
It's very important that we make sure that all of the trucks operating on our highways are safe to do so. But recently, safeguarding lives has taken on a slightly different meaning for us. We met a partner, Truckers Against Trafficking, and we decided, gosh, with the 25 million trucks that we weigh every single year, we have an opportunity to get out there and educate the professional driver on what human trafficking is, how to spot the signs of human trafficking, and what to do when you see that. So we've partnered with Truckers Against Trafficking to get out to all of the rest stops and weigh stations and trained all of our frontline crew. Every time a truck pulls in and we end up having to speak to that trucker about one of those issues I mentioned before, we take that opportunity to educate them and share some information about human trafficking. If we can have 25 million professional drivers running around Virginia spotting human trafficking, there will be no safe haven for human trafficking in Virginia.
Earlier this year, FMCSA launched a campaign called Your Roads, Their Freedom, which aims to raise awareness of human trafficking in the commercial motor vehicle industry through outreach efforts. A trucking company owner applying for H-2B truck drivers recently learned a valuable lesson about the regulatory process. Texas-based MN Trucking recently applied to hire 15 H-2B visa holders as truck drivers, stating that his desire to expand his company was being hampered by a lack of drivers. The Office of Foreign Labor Certification, however, denied the application, citing that MN Trucking did not establish that the H-2B job opportunity was temporary in nature. MN Trucking had 10 business days to respond, but just prior to that deadline, asked for an extension. Regulations do not provide for extensions, so the application was denied without chance of appeal. MN Trucking did request administrative review of the denial, but the appeal was denied as well by an administrative law judge. Commercial trucks were the subject of an enforcement blitz outside of Columbus, Ohio this week. The Ohio State Highway Patrol worked in step with local law enforcement along State Route 161 in New Albany for the operation. The Highway Patrol says 89 commercial vehicles were stopped, most were inspected, and 71 citations were handed out. Among those, 8 trucks were placed out of service. OOIDA's Truckers for Troops program extended its charitable contributions to the Veterans Community Project last week. OOIDA Director of Public Relations Norita Taylor dropped off a $10,000 check and 125 backpacks filled with snacks and hygiene kits to the VCP location in St. Louis. Truckers for Troops provide support for troops serving overseas through care packages and veterans back at home through the VCP, which provides services and housing for veterans who have fallen on hard times. Rebecca Tallman is the executive director of the VCP location in St. Louis. She said every single dollar that was donated will be put to good use.
Just last week, we had, 18 veterans walk through one day of the week to receive services, and 9 of those veterans were brand new. And recently, we just hit our 100 mark of outreach cases. And so that means that, we've had over 100 veterans walk through the front door of our outreach service center to receive these services. So it's so important that every single dollar we're bringing in right now truly is allowing us to do this mission.
The St. Louis VCP site opened up last year, welcoming its first residents in October. Congresswoman Cori Bush, who represents the St. Louis area in the U.S. House, was at the donation event last week. She told us she's grateful that VCP is doing the work it's doing.
My husband's a veteran. My brother's a veteran. My mom's 8 brothers and sisters are veterans, and their wives or spouses are veterans. Their kids, So this is a huge, supporting our military is huge for me. But our veterans, what happens when they come home? And so because I've seen so many of the ways that where there can be a need, where there are holes. It's up to us to do the work to help to make sure that we are not only looking at them as veterans, but, humanizing those that, were able to, that made the decision to sacrifice for us. And so it's really important because our work in our office, the motto of our office is to do the absolute most for every single person in our district, starting with those who have the greatest need.
OOIDA has raised more than $800,000 through its Truckers for Troops program since 2007 and sent more than 3,200 care packages to more than 39,000 members of the military. The next annual fundraising campaign for Truckers for Troops is the week of November 11th. And finally, in a case of don't believe everything you read, especially on social media, no, a truck carrying king cobras did not overturn near Casper, Wyoming this week. It started on Facebook in a post from the Casper Planet, a satirical account. The claim was that the truck crashed on Interstate 25, releasing hundreds of the deadly venomous snakes onto the highway. The post was shared more than 27,000 times and generated thousands of comments, even prompting calls to authorities, but it's not true. The Casper Star-Tribune ran an article debunking it, noting that the post was generated by AI and came from a satirical account. The Casper Planet account later posted an update saying the story is not real and not to bother the authorities, who have better things to do. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. If a carrier, shipper, receiver, or broker tries to coerce you into violating the regulations, either call 1-888-DOT-SAFT or file a complaint online to the National Consumer Complaint Database. Starting Friday, Marty Ellis and OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker, will be at the Shiawassee County Truck Show. That takes place in Corona, Michigan. Stop in, say hi to Marty, and join OOIDA for a $10 discount. Next, we'll hear the latest on the Underride issue from OOIDA board member Doug Smith and Jeff Bennett of Utility Trailer. And change is coming to the freight market, but it's coming slowly. We'll hear from Brent Hutto of Truckstop. We'll be back in just a moment with more news and information. I'm Mark Rettig, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Capital Reman is your leading source for quality remanufactured engines and components. Capital Reman stands ready to serve all OOIDA members to help reduce costly engine repairs and replacement. Visit capitalreman.com today and use code OOIDA10 to save.
ULSD is hurting your engine. Fight back with Howe's Diesel Defender. Get the most powerful cleaning and maximum lubricity to protect and extend the life of your entire system. At a guaranteed increase in fuel economy, and you can't go wrong with Howe's.
Dispatch, I picked up that load of steel, so I'm ready to roll.
Sounds good. Remember, we're getting paid by weight, so make sure to use a CAT scale.
I wouldn't weigh anywhere else.
Forgetness accuracy when you're truck on a CAT scale.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Welcome back. You've heard us over recent months recount various meetings of the Advisory Committee on Underride Protection, which recently wrapped up its work with 2 reports to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. The agency will take the committee's work into account when considering whether to implement a side underride mandate. But to say that the group failed to find common ground in its recommendations would be an understatement. They didn't agree on much in the end, even on the definition of a consensus. It's something the members representing safety groups ultimately won out on, after arguing that a simple majority would suffice as a consensus, despite previous DOT committees having required thresholds of 75% or higher. Joining us with some perspective are 2 members of the committee, OOIDA board member Doug Smith, who represented truckers on the panel, and Jeff Bennett, the president and CEO of Utility Trailer, who represented motor vehicle engineers on the committee. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
It's good to be here.
And here in Studio A to take part in the conversation, Mark Schrimmer of Landline Magazine. Mark, good to see you.
Yeah, also good to be here.
So, Jeff and Doug, I want to start with this first question here, kind of going back to the beginning of this advisory committee. I'm curious what your expectations were when this all first started out, and as a follow to that, how those expectations kind of stack up against reality and what you know now. Again, I want to ask both of you this question. Doug, I want to start with you with those questions there.
I came there to learn because I had never really heard much about side underride, but I also came to teach them about the engineering challenges that it would bring and the day-to-day use of the things and navigating through our public streets and infrastructure. That's what I was looking at.
Yeah, and we'll get into how that played out here in just a little bit. But Jeff, your expectations going in, what were you hoping? What were you expecting?
Well, I anticipated a collaborative environment where diverse perspectives would be integrated and provide what was asked of the committee, written consensus advice on safety regulations to reduce underride crashes and fatalities relating to underride crashes, effective decision-making. Expected the committee to make evidence-based decisions that balanced safety and practicality, and that focus on hard facts, not emotion and presuppositions would rule. There'd be transparency. We'd hoped, at least I'd hoped for transparent discussions and decisions, where I could learn, a few things, and I'm sure Doug would feel the same way. We all want to learn all we can on the subject to make, a carefully thought of solutions, But it turns out, like in reality, there was deep division within the committee. A group of roughly 7 to 8 members were already committed from the beginning and had worked together previously towards recommending that side underride guards be installed on all trailers regardless of the evidence of need, effectiveness, or cost, or unintended consequences. These resulted in separate majority and minority reports indicating a lack of consensus. Reviewing background and statement of these individuals revealed that they had preconceived notions going into ACUP and brought and acted on their biases in discussions and voting.
Yeah,
I better leave it there. I don't want to get too far along the line, but you get the general gist.
Yeah.
And speaking on that emotional thing, there was twice that I was beat down about we can't talk about the money, because there were 3 members of that committee that the reason they were in that cause is because they had lost family members to it. And I myself had lost a family member to a not at fault accident, so I understand their emotions. They can't, I mean, that was their justification, was getting involved in this because they had lost family members, and that really tilted the ability to form a consensus because of the emotions. It wasn't factual decision making. It was a lot of emotions. I mean, I got shouted down twice.
Now, you both played a role in crafting that minority report, as you mentioned, Jeff, that you guys had to have two different reports. Starting with Jeff, what were kind of the main points that you hope the agency kind of takes away from what you guys were trying to get across?
Well, first and foremost, the majority report does not reflect a true consensus of the ACUP members, but rather a simple majority of those with preconceived notions and or who work for plaintiff attorneys as crash reconstructionists and the like. I hope they would take away a couple of key points. Again, that there is data out there that needs to be presented and understood by technical experts that understand the relevance. And again, we're looking for good engineered solutions that work in the real world. We need to have the effectiveness of the proposed guards. The tests that I've been involved with for side underwrite guards. The company I work for, Utility, has one. There's one other commercially available guard that's called Angel Wing. We did thorough testing on it, and we found it to be the Angel Wing to basically, be unsafe and should not be installed on trailers. Just loading the trailer up with a fork truck, you damage the brackets that the guard is attached with, and the guard could fail, could come off, on the highway, etc. The breakover angle or the ground clearance in the center of the trailer is severely reduced. So changes of grade, like going over rural rail crossings, traversing steep driveways when making deliveries, or ground level docks with steep ramps in major cities where space is limited, all really test that ground clearance under the trailer, and you would hit our tests show that you would hit the Angel Wing and damage it severely and damage the trailer severely. So we also did crash tests on our guard, and we've determined that side guards, in some situations are effective at stopping a vehicle at 35 miles an hour, but in other conditions, totally ineffective. As a matter of fact, the testing we did with the utility side underwrite guard, we showed when we performed the IHS test on the end, like we do on the rear guard, the guard completely failed. The car was allowed to go under. So there are a lot of unanswered questions, and there's a lot of study that still needs to be done. And to make recommendations at this point, to NHTSA, to DOT, the Secretary of DOT, and to Congress right now is extraordinarily premature. And that's really what I'm hoping the minority report clarifies for everybody that's interested.
The members of the majority, they just kept saying about, well, Europe it's just doing fine in Europe. I got back from Europe and there were underride protections on everything. I just saw nothing but underride protection everywhere I looked. And my presentation was such how different Europe is from America. They have 2-axle trucks pulling 3-axle trailers, and I don't think there's a trailer there. It's over 42 feet, maybe 45 at the max. But they are fixed tridents, and they don't have sliding axles back and forth. And that's an engineering problem that nobody had a real answer for, about how to close that 10-foot gap that a slider creates, so you can get in and out of California, and you can couple up short to get around corners. You can stretch out to carry more, the bridge axles in some states. Nobody had an answer for that other than, well, Europe's got them. Why can't we? Yeah. And I pointed out how, their roads were built by the Romans and built for the width of a chariot, and they built their cities around that. And we came to a brand new country and started building roads you could turn your wagon around without backing up the team.
Yeah.
We just have a bigger place to operate. We have 53-foot trailers. Some states go 55 and 57. Jeff could probably tell you how many states their have longer than 53s. But that's such an engineering problem with the breakover point on pit docks. I put pictures of, crushed air fairings because they back down into a pit dock. Well, if that was all tubular steel for a underride protection, it's crushed. Just so many engineering problems.
In Europe, those are called pedestrian guards. They're also required in Mexico as well. And all we had to do was add an additional stiffener to our side skirt design that we provide on our dry fates and reefer trailers on the rear. And that's all it was required to pass the strength requirements of a pedestrian guard. It's only like 150-pound force that needs to be applied. To stop a car, you need a structure that can, withstand maybe a 40 to 70,000-pound force. So they look like side underride guards, but they're not. They're pedestrian guards in Europe.
Yeah, and that's something, hearing you guys talk here reminds me of the frustration I could feel through my computer screen during these meetings, because you both continually tried to raise these points. And as you pointed out earlier, they were not met with a lot of openness. The practicality aspect of this is the real big one. And you mentioned this in your dissenting minority report, right, about the practicality or lack thereof of such a mandate and what it would look like. You talk about unintended consequences as well, which I thought was very important to really underline to NHTSA in particular. Can you talk a little bit about that? And Doug, we can start with you here, just about what you foresee, what problems you foresee coming down the pike if this mandate were to go into effect.
Well, right now you get automobile transporters get hung up on railroad crossings because they have very low ground clearance. Lowboy transporters, same thing. As our Vice President Louis Hughes said, the only way to get off a train track is with a tow truck or a train. Now, that said, the other unintended consequences was weight. That wasn't a problem for them. They thought that the government should just make the weight allowance higher to allow for that extra 1,000 pounds. Right now, we have 48,000-pound loads tendered for flatbeds. It used to be 50,000, but we just keep adding on things like DPF filters and DEF tanks, APUs, getting our lightweight, our tear weights up to the point where they have had to cut the loads from 25-ton to 24-ton. Now, we want to add another half ton of air weight, 1,000 pounds probably, for an effective underride. That one that he talked about, the Angel Wing, corks 4,000 pounds on the existing rear underride, so it's like halfway ready to collapse now by the tension put on it by the Angel Wing. Not a problem to them. They just want to legislate the laws of physics, and it doesn't work.
Oh, the whole point of unintended means we don't know about them, right? So we're just talking about the ones we think we know about. First off, like Doug's mentioning, the added weight increases, the amount of fuel that you need to accelerate, in traffic all the time. And of course, if you're displacing payload, again, that just means more trucks are going to be required on the road, more trailers and trucks, to haul the same amount of freight. If you just added the Angel Wing or the utility side guard with no side skirts on a trailer, the aerodynamic drag would go up significantly. I'm planning a test of that later this year to see exactly what the drag is. But it's not hard to see what that drag is without putting a side skirt on. So, problem if you put a side skirt on, that will counter the effect of the increased drag. But the only reason why utility side skirts work and side skirts pretty much of any other make is that they're flexible, not that they're rigid. If the rigid ones the industry started off with rigid side skirts early on, about 10, 15 years ago, and they all broke off because of the ground clearance issues Doug mentioned, because other things as well. The bottom line was you didn't want something rigid under your vehicle. You wanted something that was resilient and flexible and could, deflect. And when you're done traversing whatever you're traversing, it would come back.
Going to jump in here because we've got a lot more to get to with regard to the Advisory Committee on Underride Protection with Jeff Bennett and Doug Smith. When we come back, Jeff will finish up his thoughts there, and we'll look ahead to what NHTSA might end up doing with the majority and minority reports. Stick around. Landline Now is back, and so are Jeff, Doug, and Mark right after this.
Every year, 28 million people are trafficked globally. The Your Roads Their Freedom campaign seeks to raise awareness in the transport industry. Truck and bus drivers, be vigilant on the roads. If you see something suspicious, text 233-733 or be free.
Truckdown.com. Whenever you have a breakdown, you need Truckdown.com. 24/7 access to 40,000 verified heavy-duty repair vendors nationwide. Less weight, more freight. Truckdown.com.
Firestone tires are for more of everything, with more durability for more miles and more confidence in your fleet. Firestone's tested tires help fleets save with value where it matters most. Learn more at bridgestonenationalfleet.com/4moremiles.
Landline Now, welcome back. When we last left you, we were talking with Doug Smith and Jeff Bennett, two members of the Advisory Committee on Underride Protection. Bennett had been talking about the unintended consequences that could arise from a side underride mandate if one were to ignore the practical concerns of such a mandate. We'll pick it up there with Jeff Bennett of Utility Trailer, talking about the difference between rigid side skirts and flexible side skirts.
The bottom line was you didn't want something rigid under your vehicle. You wanted something that was resilient and flexible and could, deflect. And when you're done traversing whatever you're traversing, it would come back. And putting a rigid side underride guard behind your skirt is fraught with problems, obviously. We have approximately 60 side impact guards on customer trailers right now, utility built, designed, tested, crash tested, the guard, and we, can't get around the problem with side skirts. We're working with customers right now to remove and replace the side skirts that have a side underride guard behind them, just for that very reason. So these were a little foreseeable. They're definitely not intended, but the things like this are slowly surfacing with hard data.
As has been mentioned, the people on the majority side seem to come in already with determined of what they wanted to do and what they were going to do. And it didn't matter what they heard, and obviously a lot based in emotion. On the Minority Report, I thought there was a lot of, like you said, logic, reason, common sense, but still. Empathy for the situation, and obviously wanting safety for everybody involved. But when you see these two conflicting reports, and this is being sent to NHTSA, starting with Jeff, how do you think NHTSA will respond to this? What do you think they're going to take from this? Because it's kind of, they're having to almost, decide this argument that went on in this committee.
Yeah, well, NHTSA has some rules of its own that it must enforce, and one of them is that before they put forth any new regulations, it has to be cost justified. So they're very, very interested in facts. They've got to have the technical facts, the legal facts, and all the facts regardless. And, I feel like the Minority Report probably did a better job of providing more facts to NHTSA than the Majority Report did. Nevertheless, I think that, NHTSA, could revise parts of the current ANPRM by addressing the concerns raised by both reports, ensuring a more comprehensive analysis. In my view, NHTSA should not base its decisions on just the Majority Report, of course, particularly insofar as the most sweeping and broad-based recommendations are concerned. Again, I hope they go away knowing that there are people out in the real world that they should be working with to basically nail down these facts and confirm these facts. There's a lot of these claims that, if we just put side underride guards on trailers, there'd be no more side underride fatalities. The facts right now show that that's not true. You could put a side guard on there, and you very definitely could still have a car underride the trailer, right? Even if it hits the side underride guard, as some of the tests have shown.
Well, Jeff left out some of the things that he brought out in the original committee meetings, and that is the unintended consequence of beefing up the rear underride guard and making it so that a third of the car, if only a third of the car hit it, that they wouldn't have any passenger compartment intrusion. But what he found in the research was the car rotates around and into the next lane and causes secondary accident. Well, the majority committee didn't see any problem with that because those accidents are more survivable to the people, so they were willing to volunteer oncoming traffic to be the airbag for another car. And I pointed out NHTSA and FHWA, Federal Highway Works Administration, was very much concerned about secondary accidents, and I did a presentation on the evolution of the concrete barrier, the Jersey barrier, over the years from 1955 or 57, somewhere in there, when the Jersey barrier first happened, and how they used to be set so that the car could bounce off of it, and now they're set to keep the car against the concrete barrier and let it scrape down the side without having a toe slope to kick it back into traffic and avoid that secondary accident. And you also see a lot of post and cable now, and that's a catch and hold strategy to avoid secondary accidents. So they just wanted to dismiss the fact that secondary accidents would be happening from bouncing off these strengthened rear underride and the existing side underrides. But I hope that that NHTSA will be fact-based, be conscious of the cost, because one of the things in the majority report is to go back to 1998 and retrofit every trailer with this side underride. So if they've got a $1.2 billion cost per year of the original equipment, you could add a third to that for aftermarket equipment because you don't have the economies of scale, and 26 times that for the years that have elapsed since 1998 if they put the mandate in today. So there's a lot of this stuff that just is not going to add up. They wanted to change out all the conspicuity tape every 5 years. But I pointed out that the NHTSA's got a regulation that says that it will be visible 500 feet by standard high beam headlights, and the regulation's there. If it's effective, leave it there. If it's ineffective, change it. It's part of the inspection program annually. So there was a lot of things that were just did not compute with me. Thanks.
And before we go, I want to ask you all this because there's so much information here. We're trying to digest it. We're trying to figure out what this means and where we go from here. I'm just going to ask you that question based on what you know. And Jeff, we'll start with you. Where do you think we go from here?
Well, about every underride crash that I have studied was a result of the car's energy doing the damage and causing the harm, not really the truck. Now, managing the car's energy is the number one responsibility and concern of every car driver with eyes, ears, and a brain. This responsibility to manage requires a license and must never be delegated or abdicated to technology alone. That said, education and public reminders to car drivers to remain awake, consider the consequences of not paying attention to what's in front of them on the road, especially when large vehicles are directly in front of them. Comprehensive research, conduct thorough objective studies to gather reliable data on underride incidents and the effectiveness of various safety measures. Pilot programs, we could implement pilot programs to test side underride guards like Utility has done. We could have alternative solutions as well, like we talked about that on the committee, even explore alternative approaches to avoid underride crashes, such as automatic car braking, crash warning alarms, and strobe brake lamps on the sides and rear of trailers. I think NHTSA should consider allowing large trucks and trailers to have auxiliary flashing brake lamps on the sides and rear to further alert drivers that a large vehicle has stopped in front of them. Stakeholder collaboration, foster collaboration amongst all stakeholders to develop practical, cost-effective solutions that address both safety and operational concerns. This is nothing short of evolution that's required. Incrementally, we could consider incremental phases of implementation of any new regulations, allowing time for proper time for adjustments based on feedback and real-world performance. By taking a balanced approach that incorporates comprehensive research, stakeholder input, and practical considerations, it's possible to enhance safety while minimizing the negative impacts on the trucking industry. So that's really where I hope to see NHTSA go and the whole industry, to tell you the truth. So, Doug?
Well, let me point out something that's got lost here is that Jeff is not against side underrides. He, like other manufacturers, are in the business to make and sell, but they do want to have something that's effective and not be called into court because what they put on there didn't stop the raging bull in the car or whatever. But, in this one meeting, they talked about how the rear underride had been in effect since 1957, 1955, somewhere in there. And it's been nearly 50 years. And then one guy blindsided Jeff with, why haven't we solved this problem in 50 years? And it was really an unfair comment to him. But later on, that same person made a statement that, well, you can't expect to walk away from a 70-mile-an-hour crash. And then John, the manufacturer's, truck and trailer manufacturer's representative, he said, I believe Lee answered his own question. and that was a nice retort for the way they blindsided Jeff on why hadn't he solved that problem in 50 years. But I would hope that they would get good data and start making good decisions with it. Now, we're going to have some offsetting things with the emergency braking, automatic emergency braking, proximity sensors, what do they call that? Adaptive cruise control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're driving along, all of a sudden you find out, hey, I'm only doing 50 miles an hour. Oh, I'm behind a truck because your adaptive cruise control has dropped your speed down. But now we've got marijuana legalization coming across the country, state by state. So those savings of lives is going to be offset by additional accidents. So,
yeah, we've got distractions galore nowadays. If you've just on. You talk about people talking on their cell phones while driving, and you've got other distractions, before cell phones too. And things are, you got to keep your eyes focused on the road ahead of you at all times. You really do. There's no substitute for that. And again, yeah, technology will help for sure. Automatic braking and collision alarms, etc., will all definitely make a difference. And the beauty of those devices is not that it's like a guard. A guard isn't just another piece of technology, if you will. But that type of device strategically is a much better way to go because it is a way to avoid the crash in the first place. That makes sound logical sense, to avoid the crash in the first place if possible. Everybody's in favor of that. Crash mitigation, on the other hand, there's no clear out for crash mitigation. You just hope for the best. And that's why I think these, flashing lights on trailers, crash warnings, and automatic braking are distinctive technologies that NHTSA is working on. And, I've already have it on my car. I've never tested it, though, thank God. But I'm assuming that the car manufacturer did thorough and effective tests to make sure it works. But other than that, I think that, like everything else, there are over 40,000 deaths per year on the road that, what can we do to take a big bite out of that is really what the question is. We have to pick our battles. We have limited resources. Again, we're going to have to decide where we're going to put those resources in trying to save lives, or the most lives that we can, effectively. And again, doing it with data, doing it with good people that know what they're talking about. They're not driven by emotions and and other agendas. That's really what we need. So anyway, I'm excited. I'm optimistic. In spite of my experience with the ACUP, I still remain optimistic that we are going to address this issue, and we are going to make a difference for the good.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect place to leave it with a note of optimism there. Doug, Jeff, we could talk to you all day, but we'll leave it there for now. We thank you for your work on the committee, and thanks for talking with us. It is much appreciated.
Thank you, Scott.
Well, thanks. It's good to be here.
Yeah, thank you both for your time.
And Landline Now returns in just a moment.
Today's rising costs affect everyone. Replace your harmonic damper with a genuine ViberTech TVD viscous damper to prevent costly repairs and downtime. Keep your money in your pocket and your truck on the road with ViberTech TVD. Recommended replacement at 500,000 miles or 15,000 hours.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off Truckstop Load Board Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2024 when you purchase Load Board Pro.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. If you're hauling freight and running your own business, you need to keep track of some basic facts and figures that can determine whether you succeed or fail. And that includes finding the freight and how much money you can make hauling it. Today, Landline Now's Scott Thompson will bring us some of that information and get some insight as to why things are happening with the folks from Truckstop.com. Here's Scott now with a report.
Thanks, Mark. As we say hello to Brent Hutto of Truckstop. How's it going, Brent?
Well, it's going great, Scott. I appreciate being on Landline today, and I also want to thank you for getting my last name correctly. And not everybody does, and so appreciate you getting it right, man.
I'm sure you've heard every variation that is out there. Well, good. I'll take my kudos there, and I'll say thank you for being on the program as always. It's always a pleasure to talk to you here. Let's jump right in here. With the spot market and conditions out there, how are things looking during these dog days of summer?
Well, I'll tell you what, summer's always an interesting time in freight because we kind of hit a peak around July 4th, and then it kind of goes to a little bit of a lull, and it starts peaking back again in the beginning of August, and that's kind of what we're going through. You know, I live in Alabama. It's hot here. People don't want to go outside sometimes, and so it's kind of the same thing in trucking where we kind of hit this little lull period before we start to go into some seasonal changes into August. So that's really what I look at. My title this week was Changes by David Bowie, which because so many things have changed. And we've got a different candidate for president now, and we've got all these different things going on. And when you see two markets that don't change a lot, politics doesn't necessarily change a lot, and freight doesn't change a lot, starting to change, then it's always an interesting thing going on. But as far as the pressure in the marketplace, it's still higher than normal. The market demand index, which is the truck stop index, we measure the available freight against the number of available trucks. It's in the 60s. Normally, it's right now the base is about 50, so it's above that, which is good. Which tells you there's more freight in the market, which is a good thing across the board. Rates have kind of continued to modulate. I call it modulate because they kind of continue to drop a little bit. We went up after July 4th, and then it's come down precipitously down to 232. That's overall. Now that's just a number in the market. 232 overall for spot market rate for the small carriers that are out there. The different markets in different areas, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but have different pricing to them. And this is just a guidepost. The spot market rates that we put up as a guidepost for anybody. And then looking at the bigger marketplace, the overall contract marketplace, the number of the freight that has been rejected and the contract that was agreed to is still hovering around 4.5%, almost 5%. So that's a good thing for small carriers because if it goes north of 5%, you'll have more freight inside of the spot market where the small carriers play, the OIDA members and the truck stop customers, where they play, and so the rates should start going up. And we're fairly bullish about the marketplace, Scott, just in general. We feel like it's going to continue to change, but change will be a little painful, and I'll talk a little bit about that too.
Yeah, and it's going to take a while too, as I'm sure you're going to get into here. But as you kind of point out, the only constant that any of us have is change. We certainly would like to see more of that, I think, these days when it comes to the freight market. And again, you're going to get into it here, but we're getting there. It's going to take some time. Speaking of change, it's always changing, right? Which regions, which lanes are hot at any particular time. What are you looking at right now? What's kind of popping out to you?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what stood out to me this week, and I went and did a little bit more research after I put it on the data sheet, is that I started looking at load availability. And I looked at availability year over year. In other words, where are we kind of in marketplaces? And so I looked at the two markets that had grown substantially. Nationally, the freight's up about 10 point, almost 11%. But where's that coming from? Well, it's coming from the South Central and the Southeast. So I'm like, okay, South Central and Southeast, what are those heavy for? Well, they're heavy for flatbed. Right? So I went and looked inside the marketplace at what was going on inside of flatbed in the market. And you look at the Southeast, the South Central is growing about 68% year-over-year load freight availability. So when there's more freight available, easier to negotiate higher rates. And then so it's almost 70% South Central, almost 85% in the Southeast, how much year-over-year freight was available. So the reason I bring this up, Scott, this is super important for truckers out there. Look, with the way that power only, in other words, you bring your truck, they'll supply the trailer, has grown, there's an opportunity for truckers to look in different marketplaces because you get a whole view inside of the technology marketplace that is freight today. So, if you're a one-truck trucker, you can look at the whole marketplace. And so you don't have to, if you're a van hauler, you don't have to haul van if it's not making enough profit for you right now. You could swap to flatbed, you can swap to another part of the market to make more money. And so I look at the marketplaces, and when you look at a 68% and an 83% increase year over year of freight availability, that means that you can make a lot more money in that segment. And just different, it's different locations, but as far as like the areas of the country. But point being is that there's a lot more availability as far as so that's what you look for when you're looking inside of the freight marketplaces to move freight.
Yeah, and those two regions you mentioned there, the South Central and Southeast rates look like they're also doing pretty well there. Comparatively speaking, I guess, to other regions as well. So something to keep an eye on there.
Yeah, for sure.
Too.
For sure. Mm-hmm.
Advice. We're always appreciative of yours and your perspective.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're kind of talking to owner-operators here. And as we look at this, we keep talking about change. We're looking at seasonality factors that are coming into play here. But advice, perspective, what do you have for owner-operators out there as they kind of continue, right, to navigate this landscape and look for those better days that are coming? They are coming. So it's going to take some time, right?
Well, definitely going to take time. I'd just say, learn how to really manage your view of the marketplace. In other words, if you normally haul in a certain area and it's not doing that well, look in other regions of the country because you may be able to, because you have a truck and you can haul in any state. Look in those areas because you may fundamentally just have to change your mindset a little bit to haul in other areas. And I know that's not always as easy as it sounds, but it's available to you. So also, I think about what are some of the industry things that are coming at you no matter what. When how about change? You talk about change being continuous, and yes, it is. Our lives are always changing. It's a new day every day we wake up. And I think about some of the things that's like what's going on and what's kind of keeping rates depressed in the marketplace. Well, the marketplace would tell you there's too much capacity, there's too many trucks to the available freight. And certainly we had tremendous amount, almost 100% increase in the number of for-hire one-truck carriers inside of the freight industry than there were before the pandemic. And so that amount of capacity keeps the rates low. But and unfortunately what we're going to see more and more capacity leave the market because it's just not sustainable for some operators in the market. Now, we don't want that. Truckstop doesn't want that. I know OOIDA doesn't want that. But we do want people to be successful, and they need to navigate to the parts of the market they can find success and profitability to benefit their families. So, but you'll continue to see this because of some of the data that's out there on the amount of loans that were taken during the pandemic and how those are starting to become those loans are having to be paid back now. And so you'll see there was about 37. This was interesting, Scott. There was about $37 billion that was taken by transportation companies during the pandemic. That money was put off. You didn't have to pay it back until now.
Yeah.
And so now all those are having to be paid back, and you'll see more companies go into different parts of the market where they can find better profitability in order to pay those back, or they'll just change their operation and go to something else. But that's something that was really, really unique that I thought was out there. I didn't really realize how much money had been given to or awarded to the small trucking companies, but it's quite substantial.
Yeah, and just to underline kind of a point you made earlier, we're seeing indications that we're slowly getting out of this mess here. So if you are holding on right now, hold on a little bit longer because things are going to turn here in the coming months. Everybody seems to think. So we'll keep an eye on that. Quick, Brent, real quick before we go, where can people go for more information courtesy of Truckstop and folks like yourself?
Well, the same place we've been for 29 years, truckstop.com, just www, the old way to say it, www.truckstop.com. There's a whole There's a little information section in our blogs, everything. I also have a podcast that I bring to the marketplace. So we exist to serve the small carrier. That's where we started in 1995, and we want to continue to do that. And so we're always publishing information to help the carrier, Scott. And just like OOIDA is always doing everything they can to help the small carrier. We're in the same boat together.
Brent, always a pleasure. We appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me on.
That was Brent Hutto of Truckstop. Mark, back to you.
Thanks, Scott. That's our program for today. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome, and I am
a
professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us! Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.